Hello, my dear students. Welcome to Class 12 Biology. Today we'll be starting with a new lesson, that is biodiversity and conservation. As per the PU board, this lesson carries total 4 marks. This lesson is very simple and easy to understand, and also you'll be coming across with so many fascinating points about our biodiversity. So let's get started. If you look around yourself, you can find many of the living organisms. It may be the plant varieties or animal varieties. You can see n number of organisms around you. If anyone tries to count the number of organisms which are on the earth, do you think it is possible? Definitely not, because we have so many varieties of organisms on this earth. It may be under the water or it may be on the land, anywhere. The organisms which are living, we cannot even count the number of organisms. If any alien comes from the different planet, the first thing it will be surprised by seeing the varieties of organisms which are living on our earth. We have such a huge number of variety of organisms. That is why it is called biodiversity. So let's understand about our biodiversity, how the organisms are classified, how many varieties are there, how many plant varieties, how many animal varieties, how many are yet to be found, yet to be named, and whether it is useful for the mankind to know about all this biodiversity, why there are so many varieties of organisms are living, all these things we will be learning in detail. The meaning of the word biodiversity is bio means living, diversity means variety. So, varieties of living organisms on the earth refers to biodiversity. We can define biodiversity as it is the variety of living forms and habitats found in a defined area. And this biodiversity term was introduced by an American biologist, Edward Wilson. Biodiversity can be classified into three categories: genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecological diversity. So let's see what is genetic diversity. You might have seen around you so many varieties of dogs are there. Even though we consider them as dog species, you might be knowing what is the difference between species and a genus. Species means which can interbreed with themselves. The organisms which can interbreed with themselves are called species, and the dog is one of the species. In that dog we can see varieties of dogs. Here is a picture of dog. You can see so many different varieties of dogs are present. How is it possible? It is because of the genetic variation. Not only in dogs, even in other organisms also we can see the genetic variation, and that is called genetic diversity. For example, if we take the human beings, all the human beings are not same. We differ from each other. For example, American won't look like African, or African won't look like Indian or Chinese. It means among the species we have different varieties. This is because of the gene arrangement in our body. Though we are considered as same species, we have variety among ourselves. And also the habitat where we are living also helps in the diversity of the organism. That's why even among ourselves we can see the changes. The one species won't look like other because there is a genetic variation. And this is called genetic diversity. The genetic variation existing within a species is called genetic diversity. The variety may be either because of the alleles, or it may be because of total gene arrangement, or it may be due to the chromosome structure. Here is a list. You can see the number of genes which are present in different organisms. The mycoplasma contains 450 to 700 genes. Escherichia coli, which is a bacteria which is very small, even that is having 4000 gene. Drosophila melanogaster, which is also popularly called fruit fly, you might have observed on the fruits it will be flying. Even such a small insect is having around 13,000 genes. Oryza sativa is a rice plant that is having 32,000 to 50,000 genes. And human beings, that means we human beings, Homo sapiens, are having around 35 to 45,000 genes. These genes which are present in the organism is responsible for the genetic variation among the organism. Here is one example of Rauwolfia vomitoria. This is one of the plant which grows near the Himalayan ranges. It is a medicinal plant. In Sanskrit, we call it as Serpagandha. This plant is having an active chemical called reserpine. Reserpine, because of this chemical, these plants are grown, and this medicine is very widely used for different purpose. And we can see this same plant which is growing in the Himalayan ranges, the amount of reserpine what is available in the plant varies from region to region. The plants which are growing in the higher region of Himalaya doesn't have the same reserpine content in them, the which are growing in the lower base of the Himalayan ranges. So like this, the plant, one same plant itself showing the chemical variation which is present inside the plant. This is because of the genetic distribution of the plant which varies from region to region. India also has more than 50,000 genetically different strains of rice, and also we have nearly 1,000 varieties of mango. All these are giving us clear picture that within the species also we can see the variation, that is because of the variation in the genes, that is genetic diversity. Next, let us see about the species diversity. The diversity at the species level is called species diversity. Already I have told you what is species. The organisms which can interbreed themselves, those are called species. And here we can see in the picture of many different species. When you look around yourself also you can see so many different species we have, because the earth is having this variety of organisms to balance the ecosystem. If there is varieties of organisms or the varieties of species, then only the balance will be there in the nature. It is not possible that only one kind of species is there on the earth. Definitely it has to depend on the other for food. So there should be varieties of organisms which should be helping each other, whether it may be in the form of food or it may be in the form of any other shelter or anything. The one species will be always dependent on the earth. The more the variety of organism, more the species richness, and that particular area or the place will be having the richness in the diversity. For example, the Western Ghats are having a great amphibian species diversity than Eastern Ghats. So many different regions will be there. When we compare the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats, the Western Ghats having more amphibian species than the Eastern Ghats. In the same way, the species might differ from one region to the other region. Where the number of species are more, that place is considered as more biodiversity or rich biodiversity place. So we can define the species richness as the number of species per unit area. More the number, more the richness. Less the number, the species richness will reduce. Next, ecological diversity. The diversity at the ecological system level is called ecological diversity. What is ecosystem? When there is a interaction between the living as well as non-living component in a particular place, that is called ecosystem. In this picture we can see the deserts, tropical rainforest region, water ecosystem, rainforest, temperate region, all these different varieties of places or the ecosystem we can see. All these are different in their own way. All are not the same. The desert region is having its own particular way of organisms living there, and also the plants are different compared to the ecosystem which is evergreen. And also aquatic ecosystem is different from the terrestrial ecosystem. Like this, the ecosystem can also have a diversity in the living forms, that is called ecological diversity. For example, deserts, rainforests, mangroves, coral reefs, wetlands, estuaries, and alpine meadows. All these are some of the examples for ecological diversity. In a broader way, when we classify the diversity, we can call it as ecological diversity. So, hope it is clear now about genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecological diversity. So let's move on to the next topic, that is species on Earth and in India. According to IUCN 2004 report, the total number of plants and animal species is more than 1.5 million. What is IUCN? IUCN is International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. In 2004, the report was given by the IUCN stating that there are more than 1.5 million of species on this earth. But later, Robert May estimated that it may be the global species diversity may be around 7 million, because it is not as small as 1.5 million, it is more than that, because we can see that there are millions of species are there which are not yet found. So in that estimation, Robert May gave that it may be around 7 million. More than 70% of all the species recorded are animals and plants, including algae, fungi, bryophytes, gymnosperms, angiosperms, comprising about 22% of the total. So whatever till now they have found or they have named, only few of the organisms are recorded as of now. But still more organisms are living on earth what they have recorded. It is not that easy to find out each and every organisms in the water or in the forest. So many varieties of organisms are there which are still yet to be found and named by the scientists. If we give a catalogue of animals or the plants to an ordinary man, how many plants or the animals he can name it? Hardly few organisms we will be knowing. But you can imagine that that is not the end of the living organism which are on the earth. There are so many organisms which even we can't imagine. We don't know many of the plants and the animals names at all. Even now we don't know the names of so many organisms. Even now, the taxonomists are working on those organisms, naming them and classifying them into the separate group. All this are even still it is going on. So as of now, we can consider there are more than 7 millions of species on this earth. Here you can see in the pie chart, you'll get an idea about the animals which are on the earth. Among animals, we can see here the insects are occupying almost 70%. It means more number of insects are present compared to the other organisms. The molluscans, crustacean and other group of animals, when we see the number of insects are more. It means out of 10 animals when we take, in that 7 will be the insects category. This is about the invertebrates. When we look into the vertebrates, in that we can see that 50% of the vertebrates are fishes and rest of the other organisms constitute 50%. Mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, they form the remaining 50%. But rest 50% are the fishes. It means more varieties of organisms are present in the water compared to land. When we come to plant variety, compared to mosses, algae, lichen, those are the lower plants. Compared to that, the fungi are more in number. But when we come to the higher plants, angiosperms are more compared to others. So almost 40% of angiosperm and 40% of fungi are there compared to any of the other plants. Do you know that the number of fungi species in the world is more than the combined total of the species of fishes, amphibians, reptiles and mammals? So this is about the biodiversity of living organism on the earth. But when we consider only the India part, the land area of India is very small when we take into consideration of whole world. When we are taking the whole world, India is only 2.4% of the land area it is having. In that, total of 8.1% of the global species diversity are present in India itself. India alone shares 8.1% of the total species diversity. Can you understand what does it mean? Even though land area is only 2.4, it is sharing a huge number of species diversity. It is around 8.1%. It is not a smaller percentage. It is really a huge variety compared to the whole world diversity. That is why India is considered one of the 12 mega biodiversity countries in the world. Next, let us understand the patterns of biodiversity. When we look into the biodiversity, you can observe that it is not uniform throughout the world. You can see just now I gave you the example. Only 12 mega biodiversity we can found in the world, but rest of the places it is normal biodiversity. Why only 12 countries are called mega biodiversity regions? Because they have the more number of species. It means other places there are less number of species. What is the reason for this? Why the distribution of species are not same throughout the world? There is a variation, right? So what may be the reason for this? The two reasons which are responsible for the uneven distribution of the biodiversity are: one is latitudinal gradient, the other one is species area relationship. So let's understand what is this latitudinal gradient and species area relationship. Let's understand first about the latitudinal gradient. To understand the latitudinal gradient, first you need to understand what is latitude, longitude, what is equator, all these things. So first I'll explain you what is equator. The region here in the globe we can see here, this is a globe. The exact center region or the center line what you are seeing here, that is called equator region. The line which passes above and below the equator region horizontally, that is called latitude. So here is the latitude. This is the latitude from here to here. Again from here to here, like that it keeps on moving till the pole. This is one pole and this is another pole. So if the horizontal line is passing along the equator, that is called latitude. What is longitude? Longitude is the vertical line. So vertically if the line is drawn from pole to pole, that is called longitude. Is it clear now what is equator, latitude and longitude? If you have understood this, now it will be easy for you to understand the concept. If you observe, the species, the number of species will decrease when it moves from equator towards the pole. So here is the equator, here the more number of species will be present, and when we move from equator towards the pole, the number of diversity of the species will decrease. Whether it may be the north pole or the south pole, when we move from the equator to polar region, the number of species will decrease. So the land area which is near to the equator, it may be from here to here, so whatever it is there, that will be having more number of species compared to the polar regions. Even India, you can see here, this is India. Here India is also near to the equator, that is why we can see more number of species. So some of the examples are given here. Colombia, located near the equator, has nearly 1400 species of birds, while New York at 41° north has 105 species, and Greenland at 71° north only 56 species. The same species of bird, when it is moving from the equatorial region to the polar region, the number of species are reducing. That you can observe. In the equator it was more, while the New York, which is at 41° north, it has around only 105 species. And again, if we go a little further, 71° north, only 56 species of birds are present. So hope you got the clear picture to understand why there is a latitudinal gradient is playing important role in the number of species. Here you can see the Amazon rainforest. It is one of the richest biodiversity forests in the world, which is in South America. It has the greatest biodiversity of around 40,000 of species of plants, 3,000 of fishes, 1,300 of birds, 427 of mammals, 427 of amphibians, 378 of reptiles, and more than lakh invertebrates. What is the reason for this? Again, the geographical distribution of the Amazon forest is in such a way that it is having a huge number of organisms in it. Recently, you might have heard the news that there was a forest fire in the Amazon forest, and because of that, many organisms were destroyed. Here are some of the hypotheses to tell you that why there is higher diversity in the tropical region compared to temperate regions. One of the hypotheses says that due to frequent glaciation in the past, many organisms were killed in the temperate region. Because of that, we can find a lesser diversity in the tropical regions, sorry, in the temperate region, but in the tropical region, they are undisturbed for several years. There was no glaciation occurring in that tropical region. That is why the organisms are more in number. Next hypothesis says that tropical environment are less seasonal, which promote niche specialization and lead to greater species diversity. It means the seasonal variation is very less compared to the temperate regions. Temperate regions will be having more of cold regions. Another hypothesis says that due to availability of solar energy to the tropic regions, they have the higher productivity compared to the temperate region. They can produce more and more, and because of this more productivity, they have the greater biodiversity compared to the temperate regions. Next, let us understand about species area relationship. What do you mean by species and area relationship? All the organisms are living in a particular area. As the area increases, the species number also will increase, and as a species increases, it will also widen its area. So this is the relationship between the species and the area. German biologist Alexander von Humboldt observed this and he gave the species area relationship. He observed that within a region, species richness increased with increasing explored area. But is it possible if the area is keep on extending, the number of species will keep on increasing? No, that is not possible. So it is possible only up to a limit. And this was proposed by Alexander von Humboldt. Here you can see the species area relationship which is plotted on a graph. If the graph is plotted area against the species richness, we will get a hyperbola which indicates that as the species increases, the area also will increase, or vice versa. If the area increases, the species also increases. Here in this picture, we can see that now some of the organisms are living in the water, but when it comes to land and if it extends its area, the number of organisms also will be more in number. Best example is increase in population of human beings. As the number is increasing, what we are doing? We are extending our land area also. We are destroying the forests and we are extending our land area to live in that place. So this is the best example to understand as the species increases, the land area also will increase. But it cannot keep on going in the same way. It will be up to a certain level. After that, it will come to a equilibrium state where even though the land area increases, the number of species cannot increase. The earth is having such balance that if the number of species keep on increasing, there will be a limit for that and it will balance that limit either by natural calamities or any other way. It will just balance the species richness. Species area relationship involves some of the mathematical explanation. Here you can see species is directly proportional to the area. It means the species, if the number of species increases, the area also will increase. If the area increases, the species number also will increase. When we remove this proportionality symbol, we can use equal and also one constant is added to that. So S is equal to C, A and Z. Z is a constant. C is constant for the region specific and Z is the constant for the slope. So if we are considering this equation in the log form, the equation will be log S is equal to log C plus Z log A. When we take this log S as Y, equal symbol as it is, log C as C plus instead of Z here we are taking M and log A as X. So when we are writing like this, you can see that it is a equation of straight line. So what we will get when we plot the graph, we will get a straight line. Here you can see the log scale. When we plot a graph for the log scale, we can get the straight line. But this is not possible in nature. The species cannot keep on increasing as the land area increases. It is this way, the hyperbola, what we are getting here, that is way the nature is acting. After certain limit, it will come to a equilibrium state due to maybe the limited source of food availability for the organism, or it may be due to the natural calamities or any other reason. It will come to a equilibrium state. This is how we can represent the species and area relationship. Before going to the conservation part, it is important to understand why we have to conserve the ecosystem. If there is use of this ecosystem, then only we have to conserve, right? So what is the importance of this ecosystem? Why we have to conserve this ecosystem? Let us understand. The first and foremost important thing which we are getting by the diversity of the species is the ecological stability. If there are varieties of species living on this earth, then there will be ecological stability. Let me explain you about this by giving an example. Suppose a cat is having a different varieties of food like fish, it may be the fish or it may be the it may be mouse or it may be the milk. Whatever it is available, the cat can have and it can survive. If the number of availability of food resource reduces, suppose the fish community will not be there, then the availability of food resource for the cat will be only the mouse and the milk. This, even if the mouse category or the mouse species reduces, then what will be the availability? It will be only the milk. In such cases, if the variety decreases, then the availability of food resource will also reduce. In turn, it will affect the individual survival. So this is a best example to give you to understand the species diversity importance. If there are many varieties of organisms or living on this earth, then the stability of the organisms to survive on this planet will increase. So in that way, the species diversity is helping in the stability of the ecosystem. The next point is productivity. Productivity is nothing but whatever the outcome of the ecosystem is there, that is called productivity. Obviously, if the varieties increases, the productivity will also increase. If the variety decreases, then the productivity also will decrease. Next is ecosystem health. The organisms which are living on this planet, it may be the abiotic components or the biotic components, all are interlinked. They have to live together, and if there are varieties, then only the organisms can live in a healthy manner. All are interlinked. The food chain, you have already learned about the food chain and the food web, how the organisms are linked together. So if one organism or one kind of species get reduced, then obviously the entire link will be imbalanced. That is why the complete ecosystem health is based on the varieties of organisms which are there on the ecosystem. So this is how the species diversity on this ecosystem is very important for the maintenance of the life on this earth. What if any of the organisms or any kind of a species, complete species, get reduced day by day? This was clearly explained by one of the scientists, Paul Enrich, by giving one of the hypotheses called rivet popper hypothesis. He explained the ecosystem and the species variety on this planet by comparing that with the aeroplane. He compared ecosystem with the aeroplane and he compared the species with the rivets. What are rivets? Rivets are the small, the metal structure or the metal nuts which are connected in the wings of the aeroplane. So he compared this rivets as a species and the flight, complete flight as a ecosystem. What if one rivet of this aeroplane, if it falls? Do you think any much difference will be there in the plane? Nothing. Because by loss of one small rivet, there will be no much difference in the plane. So plane can fly as it is in the air. Suppose if it is continuously happening like this, one by one, whatever the rivet is there, it is falling or it is getting lost, then finally, definitely it will affect the complete plane, isn't it? So this is how the ecosystem also functioning. By loss of one species, the ecosystem might not get affected initially, but gradual decrease of the species day by day results completely loss of ecosystem. It will definitely affect the ecosystem because All the species are interlinked and there will be imbalance or it will be completely loss of the ecosystem. What do you think why the species will come to an end or why the species will be lost from the ecosystem? The main reason for the loss of biodiversity is by human activities. Here are some of the examples to explain how human activities are resulting in the loss of biodiversity. The colonization of tropical Pacific islands by humans led to the extinction of more than 2,000 species of native birds, and more than 15,000 species are facing the threat of extinction in the worldwide. At present, 12% of birds, 23% of mammals, and 23% of amphibians and 31% of gymnosperms face the threat of extinction. These are all due to the human activities which are going on to construct more and more buildings and destruction of the ecosystem. So we can say that the human beings are the main influencers of the biodiversity loss. This is because the human population is growing more and more, and because of more population, the consumption also increasing. To manage the consumption and the increased population balance, they have to destroy the forest areas to build up the house and also for the other purposes. The human beings think that whatever it is necessary for them, only that has to be in the nature. So what they will do, only the available resources they will try to keep with themselves, and the other organisms and the plants they will keep on destroying. So because of that, the resource whatever is there in the nature that is reducing day by day, and that is leading towards the biodiversity loss. Here are some of the causes for the biodiversity loss. The first one is habitat loss. Habitat loss is nothing but the whatever the place is available for the organism or the species to live, that habitat is getting lost by the human activities. Whatever the nutrient resourceful places there that has been destroyed by the human activities for either for the commercial purpose or it may be due because of the or the land purpose, anything, whatever it is, the reason is the mainly the fragmentation of the ecosystem is happening by the human activities. That is called habitat loss. The second point is introduction of alien species to the environment. If any of the alien species, what is the meaning of alien species? If any new species comes to the already existing group, that is called alien species introduction. So when any of the new species is introduced to the ecosystem, if that is negatively impacting the already existing group, then also the ecosystem loss will takes place. The species which were already present in that place will get affected by the new species, and that will destroy the original species which were present in that place. Next is overexploitation. To meet up the resource supply to the increasing population will result in exploit more and more exploitation of the resources which is there already in the nature. This also results in loss of biodiversity. Apart from this, the pollution and some of the climatic changes also results in the loss of biodiversity. Sometimes even the coexistence of the organism also can affect the loss of biodiversity. How? If the two organisms are living together in a symbiosis manner, then loss of one organism will also affect the other organism's survival, and that organism also will die because it is dependent on the other organism. For example, orchid and the bee are interdependent on each other. Orchid is dependent on the bees for pollination, and bees are dependent on the orchid plant for the nectar. Suppose the orchid plant dies, then the bee species, whatever is there, that will also come to an end because there is no availability of nectar. In the same way, if the bees get destroyed, the orchid plant will come to an end because there are no species for the pollination purpose. In that way, both are dependent on each other. In such cases, the coexistence also leads to the biodiversity loss. So these are some of the causes for biodiversity loss. Compared to other causes, the human activities plays a major role in destruction of biodiversity. And such biodiversity loss leads to extinction of species. Here you can see in the picture some of the extinct animals: dodo, kaga, stella sea cow, Thysin. These are some of the example for the extinct animals. After knowing what is the importance of this biodiversity and what are the causes of this biodiversity loss, now it's time to understand how to conserve this biodiversity. We can classify the reasons for the biodiversity conservation into three categories: narrowly utilitarian, broadly utilitarian, and ethical argument. So let's see what are these. We know that how important the biodiversity is for us. If we consider in a narrow way, it is a main source of our economic benefit. We are getting many economic benefits by the nature. It may be in the form of food, or it may be firewood, fiber, medicine, construction industries, industrial productions, whatever it is, many things we are getting by the nature. So it is important to conserve this biodiversity so that we'll conserve the whatever the available resources are there for the future use also. If we consider in a broader way, we are getting total 20% of this oxygen from the nature itself, that too mainly by the Amazon forest. Can you now imagine how important the forest is for the survival of the all the living organism on this earth? Yes. If you go to any hospital and if you just ask for the price of one oxygen cylinder, you'll understand how the nature is playing a very important role in giving the oxygen to the human beings, not only human beings, all the living organism. Another important point is pollination. Pollinators like bees, birds, bats, these are the varieties of organisms which are helping in the pollination of plants. If there are no pollination happening, definitely the what will be the cause, you know very well. The fruits will not be available, the vegetables will not be available, which are the sources of food for the organisms. So the pollination process is playing a vital role in the plant's life, and that can happen only if there are varieties of living organisms are present in the earth. Next is aesthetic pleasure. If you're just walking in the forest or if you're walking in the greenery place, definitely you will feel somewhat a pleasure to the mind. Even when you walk in the garden or when you walk in the open air where the completely it is full of greenery, the feel what we get, it is priceless. So these services, whatever the ecosystem is giving for us, this is priceless. Next, coming to the ethical argument, there are millions of organisms on this earth that are living. It may be the plant or animal or it may be the insect, whatever it is. Each species on this earth is having some intrinsic value, and we should respect that. This earth is not made for only for the human beings, it is for all the organism. It may be the small insect or it may be the bigger insect or it may be the plant or it may be the animal, whether it is useful for us or not, we have to consider it in a respectful way. What human beings are doing, whatever it is useful for them, only those kind of plants they are growing, only those kind of animals they are taking care, only it is commercial way. Always the human beings are looking into towards the beneficial of mankind, but they're not thinking about the importance of each living beings on this earth. It is therefore our moral duty to take care of all the living creatures and pass on our biological legacy in good order to the future generation. We can conserve this biodiversity in two ways. One is in situ conservation, the other one is ex situ conservation. In situ means in means inside, situ means it is a kind of glass covering or something like that, like inside the allotted area or given area, that is called in situ, and ex situ means outside. Ex means outside, so ex situ conservation in it is nothing but conservation outside the area. In situ conservation includes the protected areas like national park, biosphere reservoirs, sanctuaries. These are some of the example for the in situ conservation, where the conservation of the organism will be happening within the location. Wherever the organisms are living, the same place the conservation will be done. So such conservation is called in situ conservation. If the organisms are conserved outside the original habitat, that is called ex situ conservation. This includes seed bank, cryopreservation, gene bank, sacred plant, home garden, arboreta, botanical garden, zoological park, aquarium. These are the some of the conservation where outside the original habitat the organism will be taken care. So this is the difference between in situ and ex situ conservation. What is in situ? In situ is the conservation method where the original habitat is protected, whereas ex situ conservation, in that organisms will be protected outside the original habitat. You might have even heard about the sacred groves. Sacred groves are the some of the places where the nature is considered as God, and there the preservation or the protection of the plants will be taking place. In some of the tribal areas, the tribal people, those who are living in the forest, they will consider that complete patch of land as a godly land, and they will preserve the land and also the species. It may be the plant species or the animal species from hunting, or it may be by cutting of the trees. Anything in such places it is prohibited. In that way also indirectly the protection of the nature is taking place, and such places are called sacred groves. Hope it is clear now how important the biodiversity is, and what are the causes for the biodiversity loss, and how can we conserve the biodiversity. Thank you.